Hi, I'm Rowena. 2 months ago, I bought a $900 junk house. That's not a typo. $900. The kind of house people drive past without a second glance, peeling paint, sagging roof, plywood where glass should be. And I bought it. Sight unseen. Not out of impulse, but because something in me was tired of waiting for permission to live my own life. My family? They didn't just laugh, they vanished. Cold shoulders, group chats minus my name, silence loud enough to drown in. But the worst part wasn't being cut off. It was realizing I'd never truly been part of them to begin with. Not in the way that counts, the way that holds, the way that sees. The lies, the polite distance, the way they'd offer hugs like obligations. I didn't recognize it for what it was, until I found myself standing in a gravel driveway, staring at this broken house I had just bought with the last of my savings. Now, they're the ones knocking, asking if there's room, in the same home they once mocked. But before we go any further, where are you watching from right now? Coffee in hand? Midnight scroll? Morning rush? Let me know in the comments. Because maybe you felt it too. That slow, quiet realization that the people who were supposed to love you never really did. Let me tell you what they hoped no one would ever hear. It was raining the day I pulled in. Not just a drizzle. That kind of steady, curtain-like rain that wraps the whole world in gray and whispers, "Turn around." The gravel crackled under my tires as I climbed the sloped driveway, windshield wipers fighting to keep up. The house looked even worse than in the pictures, one shutter dangling like a missing tooth, the roof caved in on one side, streaks of mildew painting the siding like tears. But it was mine, every splintered inch of it, paid in full. I parked, engine ticking in the cold. And I just sat there, not proud, not victorious. I felt banished, like I'd been exiled from something I never really belonged to. Eventually, I opened the trunk, pulled out a folding chair, my little ritual companion from years of writing in borrowed corners. I set it in the gravel and sat. The ground squelched beneath my boots, tugging like it wanted to claim me too. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Just a week before, I was at my parents' house. Sunday dinner. Still clinging to this aching hope that if I just kept doing the right things, they'd finally see me. The roast was overcooked. The air was thick with old wine and newer judgment. Mom was beaming over Callista's $15,000 spiritual retreat to Sedona. "It's a soul investment," she said, like it was nothing more than a pedicure. "She's earned it." Callista sipped her wine, eyes half closed, as if she were already in a healing vortex somewhere. Then Dad looked at me. "Didn't you say the funds were going through last week?" I didn't flinch. I didn't send the money. Forks froze midair. Even the dog stopped begging. "I bought something," I added. Callista paused mid-sip. Mom blinked. Once. Sharp. "You what?" "I bought a house. It's a mess, but it's mine." The silence that followed was heavier than the rain falling now. Dad's voice cut through like an axe. "You spent your savings on yourself." Callista laughed. Dry, sharp, theatrical. "You bought a rotting shack instead of helping me cleanse my aura? Wow, that's peak Rowena." "I never promised I'd pay for your retreat," I said. "I just didn't say no." Mom set her wine down with surgical precision. "You've chosen poverty. Don't expect us to endorse delusions." I opened my mouth to explain, but Dad raised a hand. Dismissal disguised as authority. "If you want to be on your own," he said, "be on your own." The next morning, I was gone from the group chat. No explanation, no confrontation, just a digital purge. And now here I was, sitting in the driveway of a house no one wanted, phone buzzing in my pocket. One new message. "Don't come to Easter." "Mom." No love, no hope you're okay, just deletion. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I tucked it back in my coat like a bruise I didn't need to touch yet. I looked up at the house. It didn't look back, just stood there, hollow, but real. See, families like mine, love has strings, expectations, performances. If you stop playing the role, the curtain drops. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Eventually, I stood, stepped over the rusted screen door, careful not to let it fall completely off its hinges. The floor groaned under my boots as I crossed the threshold. Inside, it smelled like damp newspapers and old apologies, the kind you keep offering to people who never say thank you. I pulled out the only curtain I owned, a faded floral from my college apartment, climbed onto a rusted stool to hang it above the kitchen window. The rod slipped, crashed to the ground. My elbow slammed into the wall. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes all you can do is laugh to keep from breaking. Then I sank to the floor, pressed my back against the peeling paint, and let the cold wall cradle my shoulder blades. And out of nowhere, the memory hit. My 16th birthday. A cake in the living room, pink frosting, crooked candles, Callista helping Mom decorate. They spelled my name wrong. No double N, just Rowena. Like even my identity was something they kept misremembering. That same year, Callista got a Volkswagen. Used, but shiny. Dad beamed. You earned this, he said. She had a C average. I got a lopsided cake and a maybe next year when I asked about driver's ed. And I thought, maybe that was when it began. But the truth? It probably started much earlier. I was just too young to know what being tolerated looks like when you've mistaken it for love. I stood again, dusted off my jeans, tried to breathe past the dust and disappointment. They never yelled at me, never hit me. That would have been clearer. Instead, they erased me like a file, quietly, gently, gone. You're too intense, Mom used to say whenever I tried too hard. Just let things be. Callista got voted best hair in high school, and they framed the certificate. I won a statewide essay contest and got a warning from Dad. Don't rub it in. So I tried harder, got straight A's, redesigned Mom's nonprofit website, stayed useful, polite, invisible. They never looked. The radiator hissed, spitting steam like it was annoyed I'd disturbed its silence. I moved into the kitchen, sat on the floor, back against the fridge. No cabinets, just an old paint can and a box of tools. I whispered to no one. Maybe they didn't forget me. Maybe they just never saw me. And then Buzz, Aunt Chorus. Hey, baby, she said, voice warm like soup. Saw you dropped out of the group chat. I chuckled weakly. Digitally disowned. She was quiet. You were never the problem, Rowena. You just weren't Callista. That was your crime. I leaned into the fridge door. Cold. Solid. Real. It still hurts. I know, but listen. When they need something, they'll come back. Don't you dare forget how this feels. Her voice cracked. Not from anger, but from love that had run out of ways to protect. And she was right. They would come back. And they'd want more than an apology. They'd want access. They'd want ownership. But this time I wouldn't give it. By dusk, the rain had let up, but the silence hadn't. The house felt like a cathedral of echoes, every creak and groan a memory trying to surface. I dragged a stool toward the kitchen window where I'd found an old rusted latch barely holding on. It didn't matter that it wouldn't budge. It gave me something to do. My fingers were stiff from the cold, breath fogging up with each exhale. But there was comfort in the doing. That's when my phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Mom. I didn't move at first, just stared at her name glowing on the screen like an ember refusing to die out. I knew what this would be. Not an apology, not really, but maybe a performance of one. I press play. Rowana, sweetheart. Rowana. The name hit like a pebble tossed against a window. Not quite shattering, but just enough to remind me they never did get it right. I've been thinking about you a lot lately, she began, her voice syrupy and even. I know things got a little tense, but Callista's been under a lot of pressure, planning this retreat, managing her business. You know how sensitive she is. Sensitive. As if Callista were a porcelain doll and I was some stone-faced statue, built to endure, not to feel. I just wish you'd considered the timing. We all want what's best for you, but sometimes your choices make it hard to support you the way we'd like. Translation. We only support you when it serves us. She looks up to you, you know. That's why she was so upset. Your father didn't mean what he said either. He was just caught off guard. You've always been the strong one, the bigger person. There it was. The line they always pulled out like a badge of honor. Be the bigger person. Translation. Swallow your pain so we can stay comfortable. Callista could lie, scream, disappear for days, and still come back to open arms and homemade lasagna. But me? I was expected to smile through the slap, patch the hole, repaint the wall, and pretend none of it hurt. I let the message finish anyway. We're all doing our best, honey. Maybe it's time to let this go. Let it go! The phrase fluttered around the room like a moth banging against a bare bulb. I closed my eyes. Her words didn't echo this time. They faded. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood there, quiet, still, breathing in a silence that felt earned. I crossed the room to a plastic storage bin where I'd stashed a few old keepsakes. At the bottom was a wooden picture frame. Cheap. Faded. I pulled it out. My college graduation. Callista stood front and center in the photo, her arm extended as she took a selfie, perfectly blocking my face in the background. I had asked them to take another picture. "We'll edit you in," Callista laughed. They never did. They framed that one. I turned the frame over, grabbed a sticky note from my notebook, and scribbled, "This is not who I am." I stuck it on the back and leaned the frame against the window. I didn't leave because I wanted revenge. I left because pretending was killing me. Because I needed just one place where I could exist without shrinking, even if it was crumbling, even if it cost $900, even if it had no working fridge and only one curtain. It was mine. The next morning, I woke to a knocking sound. At first, I thought it was that damn shutter again, but the knocks were too deliberate, sharp, intentional. 3 of them. I peeked through the curtain. Callista. She stood on the porch like she was waiting to be discovered. Cashmere coat, oversized sunglasses, a stiletto heel tapping a soft beat against the porch wood. Even standing still, she looked ready for a photo op. Before I could even open the door, she was talking to my neighbor, smiling, waving, her voice sugary. "Mom says she's really let herself go," she said, gesturing vaguely at the house. "But you know, some people need their little rebellions." I opened the door. She turned with a grin. "There she is, the homeowner. Honestly, this neighborhood's gone downhill. Do you get raccoons?" I leaned against the door frame. "You here for a wildlife tour?" She smiled wider. All teeth, no warmth. "Just checking in. You kind of dropped off the grid." "You mean after you told Mom I was spiraling in a hoarder shack?" "Exaggeration." She waved a manicured hand. "A little space seemed healthy." Her eyes flicked around the porch. "This place has personality, a certain funk. Is that mildew or character?" Another neighbor walked by. Callista waved again. "Family bonding," she said sweetly. Then, with a dramatic sigh, she turned back to me. "Listen, I'm in a bit of a bind. Pipe burst in the spa wing. Disaster. Had to cancel 3 sound baths." She didn't pause for sympathy. She didn't need it. "So, I was wondering, just for a night or two, while they fix things, I can crash anywhere, even here." Even here, like she was gracing a campsite with her presence. "Callista," I said slowly, "you told Mom I was unstable." "I never said—" "You said I was spiraling." She hesitated, a flicker of guilt, quickly buried. "I was worried you've surprised us. You're surviving. Still doing that Grant blog thing, right?" I didn't bother correcting her. I stepped aside. "One night," I said, "don't touch anything." Her eyes lit up. "You're the best. Seriously, people walk all over you." She breezed past me like the house was hers. That was her way. Smile, flatter, conquer. The next morning, I woke to the sound of laughter. But not the kind that includes you. The kind that slices. I stumbled into the kitchen. There she was, ring light on, phone propped on a tripod, live streaming. "Say hi to my angels," she beamed. "We're doing something meaningful today, visiting my sister's little fixer-upper. It's rough, but we love a transformation, right?" She panned across my chipped counters and cracked linoleum. "This fridge hasn't worked since like Y2K, she joked. "And don't get me started on the smell. Honestly, it's giving generational trauma." Comments pinged through the stream. One asked, "Is that a shelter?" Callista laughed. "No, sweetie, it's my sister's house. I know, tragic." Another, "Is that really your sister? She looks like a squatter." Callista aimed the camera at me. "Yep," she chirped. "That's her. Great Depression chic." And something inside me snapped. Not loud. Not sudden. Just a quiet break. Like a bone that's been bent too far, too long. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I walked across the room and with 2 fingers lifted the phone off her tripod. The suction pop of the grip echoed through the kitchen. "Hey!" she shrieked. "What are you doing?" I held the phone away from her reach. "You want content?" I said, my voice low and calm. "Here it is. Get out, before I give them the real story." She lunged again. I stepped back. "You don't get to weaponize my life for likes. Not anymore." Her face changed instantly. The influencer mask fell. Now she was soft, tearful, contrite. "I was just trying to help," she whispered. "Maybe people would donate or something. It was for you." "No," I said. "It was for you. It always is." I handed her the phone like a cursed object. "You mocked me in my own home, turned my pain into performance." Callista grabbed her things. Tripod, makeup bag, curated victimhood, and made for the door. At the threshold, she turned dramatically, voice raised like she was still mic'd up. "This is what I get for being a good sister." Then she left. The door slammed behind her. and I stood in the silence, trembling not from fear, but from something else. Clarity. That night, I sat on the second-hand couch with a chipped mug of coffee, hands wrapped tight around the warmth. Outside, the wind had quieted, and from the cracked window came the sound of kids playing, laughter skipping like stones over pavement. My phone buzzed beside me. Notifications. Too many. I hadn't posted anything, but someone had. I opened Instagram, expecting the usual. Callista's curated grid of pastel quotes and filtered smiles. But this wasn't a post. It was a fundraiser. A GoFundMe titled, "Help My Sister Rebuild." And there it was, my face. Mid-step, sweat shining on my brow, hauling a garbage bag toward the curb. Another photo showed me curled on the couch, wrapped in Aunt Chorus's old quilt, eyes closed, completely unaware. Below the photos, Callista had written, "My baby sis has been through so much. Help me give her the life she deserves."
The host was sent that day.
And recipient, Callista Vale. Withdrawal account, her business PayPal. I stood so fast the coffee sloshed onto the floor. She hadn't said a word. Not that morning. Not in a text. Not even a fake heads up. I scrolled through the comments. "Hey, you're such a good sister. I donated $50. Hope she heals. And we need more people like you." I stared at the words. My lips parted, but no sound came. I could feel the betrayal like a bruise rising beneath my skin. I opened Callista's stories. Sad piano music. A blurry shot of the house. Captions like, "Escaping toxicity," and "Holding space for her healing." She was crying, in her car, with perfect mascara. I tapped open our last message thread. Still blank. Still silent. I tried to report the campaign. A pop-up appeared. "This fundraiser does not violate our community guidelines." Of course it didn't. Callista was too good. Frame it just right. Say just enough. Let everyone else assume the rest. Then a new message slid across my screen. At Legal LC Co. "Hey, I saw the GoFundMe. You didn't authorize that, did you?" I blinked. At Legal LC Co. "I'm a paralegal. Colorado bar certified. This looks like civil exploitation. Possibly even wire fraud. You want to talk receipts?" My heart steadied. Not raced, steadied. I typed one word. A yes. The reply came instantly. "Cool. Start with screen recordings. Timestamps. Don't confront her publicly. Yet. Trust me." And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not rage. Not sadness.
It was.
Not a lot, but enough to begin. The next morning, the house was still. No laughter, no footsteps. Just the click of my laptop keys as I captured every story, every post, every withdrawal screenshot like digital breadcrumbs. My phone buzzed again, a Zoom notification. Elsie's face appeared, warm and focused. She looked like the kind of woman who never forgot a single deadline. "We're finalizing the cease and desist," she said. "You ready?" I nodded. She could see I was shaking a little. "Breathe, Rowena," she said gently. "The paperwork does the talking now." And that's when I realized I wasn't going to fight her with fire. I was going to fight her with untruth. I leaned back in my chair. The morning sunlight spilled across my makeshift desk like a quiet benediction. Callista had scheduled a healing live stream for later that day. A special Q Plage to clear the air. Elsie had timed the delivery to perfection. 10 minutes before Callista went live, Elsie texted, "Couriers in position. Letter ready." I opened Instagram Live. There she was, centered in a perfect glow, face softened with just the right amount of vulnerability. "Hi, beautiful souls," she began, voice like honey. "I know there's been some chatter, but I believe in light, in grace, in family." Her feed filled with hearts and "Queen" comments. Behind her, a candle flickered. A white orchid stood in frame. Her brand was intact. Until the courier arrived. He stepped into view like an accidental extra on a film set. Callista froze. The man handed her a sealed manila envelope. Thick. Her smile faltered. The chat lit up like fireworks. "What's that?" She looked scared. "Shanji, what's happening?" She opened the envelope slowly, trying to keep her face neutral. But the second her eyes hit the letter, her mouth parted. Just a sliver. The soft music looped awkwardly in the background. She mumbled something off camera. Then the screen went dark. No explanation. Just gone. Within minutes, Reddit blew up. Letter rot leaks. And Callista exposed. Clips of her frozen expression turned into memes. Tweets broke it down frame by frame. Internet sleuths, trace the GoFundMe to her business PayPal. Then a new message landed in my inbox. And now he's president of Skyline Estates. We were unaware Callista Vale used the Skyline Estates community name to solicit funds. This misrepresentation violates our ethics policy. Attached are applications where Ms. Vale cited you as a displaced homeowner in need of crisis housing. I opened the documents. There it was. My name. My address. My story, rewritten in someone else's handwriting. A character she had crafted from my pain. But this time, I didn't freeze. I didn't scream. I simply started printing. Every page. Every word. I wasn't built for pity. I was built for persistence. And now it was Callista's world that was unraveling, thread by thread. The drive to Los Angeles was longer than I remembered. Not in miles, but in meaning. Callista's big Callista Cares charity gala was that night, plastered across city banners like a benediction. Healing families, one heart at a time. The irony almost made me laugh. I pulled up to the valet outside the Marriott Grand Ballroom, wearing a simple navy dress and the old silver locket Mom once called flea market garbage. Tonight, it felt like armor. Journalists hovered near the red carpet. Influencers preened. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. I didn't come for the stage. I came for the truth. Inside, the ballroom shimmered. Crystal chandeliers, velvet ropes, champagne flutes. Waiters floated by, with eco-friendly hors d'oeuvres and rehearsed smiles. Callista stood in the spotlight, laughing, glowing, soaked in admiration. Her gown was silver and flawless. Her face, effortless. You'd never know the cracks were already forming. I took a seat near the back, unseen. Just where I wanted to be. Eventually, the lights dimmed. The projector screen dropped. Callista stepped up to the mic. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight," she said, voice poised. "Everything I do is for love, for family." The slideshow began. Smiling kids, soup kitchens, stock photos. Then, a flicker. A new slide. Not a smiling child. Not a charity stat. A screenshot. "Let her rot in that dump. I gave them the GoFundMe link for PR. Cry for me, baby." Gasps swept the room like wind through a field. Another slide. "She's good for sympathy points. Keep the cameras low. Show the cracks." Silence. Phones raised. Mouths opened. Callista turned toward the screen and cracked. Her smile disappeared. Her voice stalled. Then, Aunt Imagine stood. She wasn't on the program, but she walked to the stage anyway. Straight, proud. She faced the audience. "I was asked to speak tonight about hope," she said. "About healing. About family." The room held its breath. "For too long we've worn masks, painted over truth, raised one child while ignoring the other, and it ends tonight." She stepped off the stage, walked straight to me, and pulled me into a hug. Not tentative, not performative, real. Phones flashed, people filmed, but I didn't look at them. I let myself be held. Not as a prop, as a person. Callista fled the room, heels clacking like a retreating army. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't need to. That night wasn't hers. It was mine. The next morning, light spilled through the windows of my house in long, honey-colored ribbons. It touched the patched floorboards I'd laid one by one, warming the worn wood like an old friend finally coming home. I pulled my sweater tighter and walked barefoot into the kitchen. The air smelled like clean linen and strong coffee. Not mold, not rot, not shame. Outside, kids were laughing. Someone had drawn hopscotch squares in sidewalk chalk. Bright blue and pink boxes stretching down the street like joy made visible. I glanced around the kitchen. No fridge yet, no backsplash, no matching chairs, but the space felt full, mine, lived in, earned. That's when my phone buzzed. A text. And Callista. "Hey, things have been rough. Any chance we could crash with you for a while? Just until we figure stuff out?" I stared at it. No apology, no explanation. Just another reach for the rope she thought I'd always throw. I placed the phone beside a pitcher of lemonade I had made for the neighborhood cleanup. Outside, people were waving, hauling trash bags, passing rakes like sacred objects. I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but because that version of me, the one who always opened the door, was gone. I walked to the entryway where a photo now hung above the coat rack. Me, age 8, paper crown, nervous smile. In the blurry background, Aunt Imagine clapping like I'd won a Nobel. Beneath it, in careful handwriting, "Knit, you always had the light." I touched the frame. No tears, no ache, just stillness. Then I picked up my phone and typed the only thing that felt honest. There's no space for lies here anymore. I wish you peace. I hit send. No second thoughts. Outside, a little girl drew a crooked yellow sun with sidewalk chalk. I watched her, smiling, breathing. The days that followed moved differently, slower. Not heavy, just earned. Each morning, I brewed coffee in my chipped kettle, opened every window, and tackled one more piece of the house, one more floorboard, one more beam. Not to prove anything, just because I could. Neighbors noticed. A woman from down the block brought me a pot of marigolds. Someone left a loaf of banana bread on my porch with a note. Welcome home. A man across the street offered to help fix the railing. Kids started calling me the lady with the flowers. It was messy, imperfect, but it was community. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. Not because I was useful, not because I was trying, just because I was a here. 5 days after the gala, the GoFundMe disappeared. No statement, no apology, just gone. But the internet never forgets. Callista's name was still trending, only now it floated alongside hashtags she didn't write. Let her rot. To truth over image. Healing without filters. People were reclaiming the phrase she once used against me, not in cruelty, but in closure. Let her rot in peace. Let her rot in her consequences. Of course, not everyone turned. Her followers fought for her. It was all fake. These screenshots can be edited. It's misunderstood energy. But screenshots kept surfacing. Documents, bank transfers, grant proposals, and my name threaded through everyone. Elsie and I spoke almost daily. She became less like a legal advisor and more like a lighthouse, a voice that grounded me, reminded me what mattered. We built a case, collected receipts, kept our pace steady and calm. One morning, Elsie messaged something new. We've had a formal request from one of Callista's major sponsors. They want a statement from you, not for legal reasons, for accountability. I stared at the message for a long time. I could have ignored it, let the wreckage speak for itself. But part of me knew I had to say it, out loud, in writing, for me. So I wrote. And statement from Rowena Vale. I never asked to be the center of someone else's story. For most of my life, I played the supporting character in someone else's spotlight. The reliable one, the quiet one, the one they cropped out to keep the frame clean. When I bought a $900 house, I was told I was throwing my life away. But that house, broken, cold, imperfect, gave me something no one else ever did. A home. Callista used my reality as content. She raised money in my name. She mocked me behind closed doors and called it branding. She didn't just steal images, she stole voice. She rewrote my story and handed it to strangers wrapped in filtered lighting. This isn't about revenge. This is about truth. And truth, once spoken, doesn't whisper. It echoes. Rowena Vale. Elsie sent it off. That same day, one sponsor dropped out. Then another. Then 2 more. Callista's brand, her carefully painted mask, began to crack under the weight of her own words. And a week later, I heard a knock. I opened the door slowly, heart steady. It wasn't her, just a delivery man. No name, no return address. He handed me a flat wrapped package and walked away. I peeled back the brown paper. Inside was a framed piece of handmade paper, black ink brushed across it in beautiful, imperfect strokes. Sometimes the home you build is made of boundaries, not walls. Tucked behind it was a small card. No signature. Just, you're not invisible anymore. I didn't need to know who sent it. Elsie, Aunt Imagine, a stranger. It didn't matter. What mattered was this. I hung it in the living room, just above the patched window, where sunlight poured in like grace. That evening, I sat on the porch, tea in hand, neighbors waving, kids playing, breeze tugging gently at the chimes I'd hung from the rafters. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. A text. You're welcome, by the way. Without my story, you'd still be a nobody. No name. Didn't need one. Callista. Still trying to claim the ending. Still writing scripts for stories that no longer belonged to her. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because she no longer deserved them. Instead, I blocked the number, set the phone down, and inhaled air that smelled like paint, fresh grass, and quiet joy. The kind of air that doesn't carry shame, only on peace. That night, after brushing my teeth and pulling on my softest sweater, I settled into bed with the kind of calm I used to envy in other people. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about something Aunt Chorus had told me weeks ago. Don't forget how this felt. I hadn't. I wouldn't. But now I was remembering something else too. What it felt like to feel safe. To feel seen. To feel real. The following Sunday, the neighborhood hosted a potluck in the little park by the library. Folding chairs, paper plates, crock pots. The kind of gathering where people bring their best casseroles and no one brags about the ingredients. I brought brownies. Not because I needed to prove anything. Because I finally wanted to share something. People asked how the repairs were going, if I needed help with the fence. One woman asked if I could teach her how to patch drywall. A man offered leftover paint. No one mentioned Callista. Not directly, anyway. But I could feel it in the way some folks looked at me a little longer with quiet respect, not pity. As if they recognized something behind my smile, the kind of strength that doesn't scream. It just keeps showing up. Later, I walked home with a borrowed casserole dish in one hand and a Tupperware of leftovers in the other. The porch light flickered as I approached, a reminder I still needed to replace the bulb. Inside, the house smelled like lavender and wood dust. The floor groaned softly beneath my steps, but less than before. Progress. I changed into pajamas and washed my face. Then, ping. And Instagram Live, Callista Vale is now broadcasting. I froze for a moment, toothbrush still in hand. My thumb hovered over the screen. Curiosity is a strange thing, especially when it's about someone who once held your heart like it was clay, soft enough to shape, hard enough to break. I tapped in. Callista was sitting in a dim room, no ring light, no golden glow. Her hair was pulled back, her sweatshirt hung loose at the collar. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. I've made mistakes, she began, twisting a tissue in her fingers. Some of you know what happened, some of you don't. But I want to be honest, finally. I held my breath. I blurred the line between storytelling and truth, she said. I used pain that wasn't mine to build a brand. I thought if I framed it right, people would keep believing in me, keep loving me. She looked down, off screen, somewhere far away. I lost a lot, she whispered, and maybe I deserve to. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just space to try again. The live ended. No comment section. No hearts floating up the screen. Just silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mint of my toothpaste still sharp in my mouth. It wasn't closure. Not exactly. But it was a crack in the mask. And sometimes that's all you get. 3 days later, I got a letter. A real one. Envelope. Postmark from Denver. No return name. Inside, a single sheet of notebook paper. Slanted handwriting. No greeting. No signature. Just this. When you were 10 and Callista got pneumonia, we all forgot your science fair. You waited in the hallway for hours, holding that volcano model. You never complained. We said we'd make it up to you. We never did. I saw the photo, the one from your graduation. I'm sorry we didn't retake it. You deserve more than being added in afterward. I reread it twice, then folded it and placed it gently in the small wooden box beside my bed. The one labeled Real Things. Not because it changed the past, but because even late honesty matters. One morning, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. No makeup, hair messy, wrinkled shirt, and I didn't flinch. For so long, I lived inside other people's reflections of me, their labels, their narratives, their filtered versions of who I was supposed to be. Now, I was writing my own version. I wasn't the strong one they leaned on while offering none of their own weight. I wasn't the broken one they kept at a distance to avoid their own shame. I was simply me, Rowena Vale, homeowner and writer and a rebuilder. On the first real warm day of spring, I invited Aunt Chorus and Aunt Imagine over for tea. We sat on the porch with plastic chairs and store-bought cookies, the sun catching the edge of our mugs as birds sang in the neighbor's tree. The conversation wasn't heavy, just light and simple. Recipes, garden ideas, old stories. At one point, Aunt Imagine leaned over and said, "You should publish that essay." I laughed. "What essay?" "The one you wrote in college," she said, "about being forgotten." I raised an eyebrow. That was just an assignment. She sipped her tea and shrugged. So was the Constitution. That night, I dug out an old flash drive and found it. Unseen, the weight of quiet rooms. It read differently now. Less like pain, more like prophecy. I opened a blank document and started rewriting. Not to change the past, but to reflect who I'd become. Some stories don't get erased. They get revised. They grow up. Just like we do. A few days later, I was out front planting lavender when a sleek black car pulled up. I didn't recognize it, windows tinted. The door opened. Callista stepped out. No heels, no lip gloss, just jeans, sneakers, and a windbreaker zipped halfway. She stood at the edge of the walkway, hands at her sides. "I came to say something," she called out. I didn't move, just waited, dirt still on my gloves. "I'm not asking to stay," she said. "And I'm not here to fix anything. I know I can't." She held out a small cardboard box. "I found this in the attic. Thought you might want it." I walked halfway down the path. She bent and set the box on the ground, then stepped back. "I won't bother you again," she said. "I know you don't owe me anything." She turned and got in the car. Drove away. No posts. No camera. Just gone. Inside the box were things I hadn't seen in years. A drawing I made in 3rd grade. A beaded bracelet from summer camp. A folded card I had written to myself on my 18th birthday. "You're allowed to take up space." I held that card for a long time. Then I added it to the real things box with the letter. Not forgiveness, but maybe a thread of grace. Shake just enough. The last of the lavender went into the soil as the sun dipped low. I wiped my palms on my jeans and looked at the house. Still a little crooked, still chipped around the edges, but glowing, honest. No longer the house they mocked. It was my home. That weekend, I got an email from the community center down the street. They were hosting a storytelling night, nothing fancy, just a few folding chairs, cocoa, and neighbors reading aloud poems, letters, or memories. They asked if I'd like to share something. My first instinct was to say no, hide, stay tucked away in the safety I'd carved out for myself. But then I thought of the girl I used to be. The 10-year-old standing in the school hallway with a volcano model in her hands, waiting hours for parents who never showed up, told they'd make it up next year. The girl who never once believed she was worth a second chance. That girl deserved to be heard. So I said yes. The night arrived, and I brought a printed copy of a new essay I'd written just days before, one I'd titled, "Eghain doesn't mean unworthy." It was short, honest, messy. It was about family, not the kind you're born into, but the kind you find, or build, or stumble into one evening over hot cocoa and borrowed folding chairs. When I finished reading, the room was silent in the best way, the kind of quiet that holds space. Then, slowly, someone clapped, then another, until the whole room joined in. Not out of politeness, out of resonance. Afterward, a woman in her 60s approached me with tears in her eyes. "I left my whole family behind 3 years ago," she whispered. "They never noticed I was gone, but tonight, I think I finally stopped apologizing for that." I hugged her, tight. We didn't need to say anything else. Spring gave way to early summer. The lavender out front started blooming, wild and a little uneven, but joyful. The sidewalks outside were covered in chalk suns and hopscotch boxes. Kids zoomed by on scooters, their laughter trailing like ribbons behind them. Neighbors waved more often. Some lingered to chat. The man across the street brought me tomatoes from his backyard. And me, I kept writing, kept patching, kept breathing. Not to prove anything, not to fix what couldn't be fixed, just to live on my terms. One morning, I checked my email and found a message from a small publishing collective I'd submitted to months earlier on a whim. They wanted to publish my essay. They wanted to call it The Home You Build. It would be part of an anthology about healing, survival, and reclaiming your voice. I didn't cry. I laughed. Not out of surprise, but out of recognition. I had bet on myself. And I'd been right. I walked to the kitchen cabinet where I kept my favorite mugs. Not for guests, just for good days. Poured coffee. Sat at the table. And exhaled. Outside, the world was noisy, honest, beautiful. Inside, it was quiet. Whole. Mine. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message request from someone I didn't know. A young woman. She wrote, "I watched what happened. I've been where you are. My sister did the same thing, took everything and made it content. I thought I was crazy for calling it abuse. But hearing your story, I don't feel alone anymore. Thank you." I stared at her message, then replied, "You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're not invisible." Some nights, I still sit on the porch and stare at the stars. Let the quiet wrap around me like a blanket I never knew I needed. I think about the battles I fought, not the loud ones, but the ones no one saw, the ones where the enemy was silence, erasure, the ache of being misunderstood in your own skin. I remember the girl with the science fair volcano, the girl cropped out of her graduation photo, the woman mocked in her own kitchen for clout. And I smile, because I didn't burn it all down. I rebuilt. One evening, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out that old family photo. The graduation one, the one where I'm just a shoulder in the frame. I didn't tear it up. I didn't throw it away. I flipped it over. On the back, I wrote, "This was the day I stopped waiting for them to see me." Then I slid it back into the drawer, not to erase the past, but to close the chapter. Not in anger, in peace. Weeks later, Callista's name showed up in a small magazine article. No drama, no new scandal. Just a footnote in someone else's timeline. And that's when I knew. I didn't care anymore. Not in the bitter, vengeful way, but in the healed way. The I no longer carry this way. This house, the one they mocked, the one I was told was a mistake, it wasn't a monument to revenge. It was a sanctuary, a reclamation, I return. To myself, to truth, to joy, however small. So if you're watching this, or reading this, or maybe sitting in your own junk house wondering if you messed up, let me tell you something. You didn't. You chose peace. And peace is never a mistake. So here we are. If you've stayed with me this long, maybe you've felt it too. What it means to rebuild from the silence. To rise, not with a roar, but with a whisper that finally belongs to you. That's the thing about choosing peace. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't come wrapped in gold or filtered through perfect light. But it comes honestly, fully. And sometimes that's all you need. I still walk the same street every morning. Past the lavender patch, now buzzing with bees, past the chalk drawings left by the kids next door, past the same cracked sidewalk that used to feel like a symbol of everything broken. Now it feels like home. Not because it's perfect, but because it's mine. Last weekend, the local library asked if I'd host a workshop. Writing through silence. 10 people showed up. Then 20. A woman brought her teenage daughter. A man read a letter he wrote to a father who never returned his calls. Someone else just cried, and that was enough. We talked, we wrote, we shared stories no one had ever heard before. Not because we wanted to be loud, but because we were finally ready to be real. After the workshop, a girl lingered behind. Maybe 19, nervous smile, shaky hands. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "I don't have the words yet," she said, "but I wanted to try." I unfolded it after she left. It read, "Thank you for showing me you can be erased and still exist." I kept that note. Tucked it into the Real Things box, right beside the drawing from 3rd grade, the volcano card, and the letter with no name. Because that box isn't just for what I've kept, it's for what I've claimed. The house still creaks when it rains. One of the upstairs windows has a crack, shaped like a spider web. The porch still leans a little too far to the left, but the light inside? It's warm. The kind that wraps around you like your favorite sweater, the kind that doesn't need anyone else's permission to shine. Sometimes I imagine what I'd say if I ever saw Callista again. But then I realize I don't need to say anything. Because I already said everything. I said it when I planted flowers in broken soil. When I refused to be cropped out of my own life. When I turned off the live stream and stood in my kitchen, not as a victim, but as a person who had survived. And survived beautifully. A few months after the essay was published, I got an email from someone at a bigger publication. They wanted to feature me in a piece about reclamation, about healing from family betrayal, about what it means to choose yourself when no one else will. They asked for photos. I sent one. Not a filtered portrait, not a perfectly lit headshot, just a picture of me, sitting on the porch, wearing a paper crown a neighborhood kid had made out of yellow construction paper, laughing, holding a cup of tea. And finally, taking up space. So now I ask you, have you ever had to choose peace over family? Have you ever realized you were holding your breath for people who never saw you? Have you ever rebuilt from something that once felt like rubble? If so, I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, if you believe in stories that are messy, true, and real, hit that subscribe button. There's more to tell. Always. Because stories like this, they don't end. They only become. They grow. They bloom. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they lead you home.